Hopefully we're live. Welcome to Anata Thursday. What a stressful morning Monday was. Not really had many problems with Facebook at all. We did have on Monday. I've got this screen where it's got a go live button, and you press it, and then it just goes live. And it's happened for 64 times in a row, so 64 weeks, no problem at all. And then it just came up saying it was temporarily suspended. So that was a bit of a panic on Monday morning. So apologies. We've got a few people coming in already, so it shows that everything's working, which is good. And I think I can actually chat back to you guys. So I can say hello and good morning. Yeah, cool. So we've got Sarah, Penny, and Julian. I think this might be. I know some of you have said about the STA moving from the Facebook platform onto YouTube. The Facebook have basically forced my hand. Actually, this works quite well. So if it all goes well today, we may actually stick with this format because the good thing with YouTube is, and we have some learners with some vision impairments that are doing some of our courses. So they get really good audio, and the because of the captions that are produced by YouTube, it makes them easier to put things through readers as well. So we might actually switch it, and we'll see how we go. Cool. So, but the one weird thing though is I've got like a YouTube dashboard, and I can see myself talking back to myself, so that's a bit weird. Okay, so we've got this going on, and I know everybody says, oh, just a few places left by now and all that kind of stuff, but there literally are just a few places left now. So we've got the anatomy workshop. The first one is in King's College, and that's the steps to King's College there. That's the old medical school. It's been there since the 1800s. So we've got I think there's about 5 or 6 spaces left now on that course, and there's a few about the same left on the Keel course as well. So if you are interested in coming on those workshops with me, then feel free to visit clinicalanatomy.education, and you can book in there. Stevie is in the group as well. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, it's weird because now I'm getting your Gmail profiles and not your Facebook pictures. So it's getting different images of everyone this morning. Cool. So we, like I said in my message, I had a really good, well, hopefully a good session planned for Monday. So we're going to just continue it today, and it's going to throw everybody's schedule out on a Thursday, doing this on a Thursday instead of a Monday. So let's just pop up the PowerPoint here. So there was a few things that I needed to finish off from the previous week. So I just wanted to go through those, and if you guys have got any questions about what we covered, then feel free to drop any messages in. I am getting your messages through, so that's good. And I think the good thing with this as well, because I can comment into the stream, if there's anything that any links or anything, then I can include links into the comment section as well. So that's good. Right. So yeah, we looked at on the last Monday. We finished off on the psoas and the iliacus muscle, and we were talking about the depth of those structures and the likelihood of being able to affect them with manual therapy. And there was a study that I noticed by I think his name's Jason Erickson. I think that's who it is. And we've always been taught as well that if you put someone in side lying position, then it moves the intestines out of the way, and then you're able to access psoas. So somebody's done tests on that. They've put somebody on in a X-ray machine, and they've put them on their side. And what they found is that the organs don't move. So that's really interesting, and it's because of suspensory ligaments of those organs. They're not designed to slosh about in the peritoneum. So and in that abdominal cavity. they are firmly bound to the abdominal walls by very strong ligaments. Yes, there will be some movement of them, but not so much to move them to the side so that you can more easily palpate certain muscles. So yeah, it was quite an interesting study, that one, and kind of led into what some of the stuff we were talking about the last time we were here. So yeah, but we've covered this a little bit before as well. So rectus femoris we've had a look at when we were looking at the knee, because obviously it crosses the knee as well. So we were focused more on this part down here when we were looking at the knee. So the rec fem, this bipinnate muscle, so that got basically two feathered edges with a central tendon, and then it comes into this tendon here, which it forms then the quad tendon that attaches into the knee. With the patella kind of floating in the middle of it. So we've talked about that. We also had a look up at this end as well because of the well, we just followed it up basically, and we saw that there were two attachments for the rectus femoris. So we're going to have a look at that in a second. Yeah, exactly, Penny. Can you imagine going for a run and your intestines being in your throat? Exactly. Yeah, these things aren't designed to move very far. If they did, we'd be in trouble, I think. So yeah, so we're going to focus on this bit up here. And we've looked at some of the bony anatomy already in previous weeks. So you've got ASIS and then the AIIS. So ASIS is anterior superior iliac spine, and then AIIS, the one below it, is anterior, so at the front, inferior, so below the superior one, iliac spine. So there's basically a knobbly bit on the end of your pelvis, just at the front there, and you can more easily feel that ASIS, and then just drop below it, and then that's your AIIS just there, and that's where one of the heads of your rectus femoris attaches into, and there is another attachment as well. So we'll have a look at that. We looked at psoas on the last section, and we also looked at iliacus or iliacus, some people call it as well. And those two muscles travel underneath that inguinal ligament and form the part of the femoral triangle. So when we get to the blood supply and the nerve supply, we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. And then one that we didn't really look at is sartorius. So we'll have a look at that one today as well, because that has an attachment up on the ASIS. Okay, so the rec fem was just underneath, rectus femoris just underneath, the sartorius just above that on the ASIS. Okay, so anterior superior iliac spine, and the sartorius, this really long muscle. And again, we've looked at that around the knee because it attaches down here on the pezanserine or pezanserine, which is the goose's foot. That's what that means. And it's got three main muscle attachments into there. And it actually comes quite far down the anterior medial part of the shin, so at the front and on the inside. Again, in the books, it looks as if it's kind of like a specific point, but it actually spreads and fans out, and it covers quite a large area. So it's about good sort of 4 to 5 centimeters of attachment, broad attachment for that pezanserine area, and that is sartorius, which is this one. Gracilis, which we've had a look at when we looked at the adductors of the thigh when we looked at that last week, and then semitendinosus, so one of your hamstring muscles. And again, we've looked at that in the knee, and we're going to have a look at the attachments in the pelvis and the hip as well. So let's just cover these off and just get those in the right area. Here we go. Hopefully this should be rectus femoris. Let's have a look. Yay. It's all working good. Okay, let's just move me out the way. It's a bit unnerving using different systems because you just hope that everything works the same. Okay, so we've got your pelvis up here, and then your vastus lateralis, which is this muscle here. So this one in the middle there is a rectus femoris. And when we were looking at the knee, we made some comments about this because it is a very thin rectus femoris. So we're imagining that this person must be quite old and their muscles aren't very big, basically. But then those are the specimens you get in the labs. You don't get usually fit young healthy people who pass away. So we don't usually get access to those bodies in the labs. They're usually 80s and 90s, and also if they're usually in pretty good health, but mainly have just died of natural causes. Because if they have any kind of pathology, then the tissue isn't good enough to preserve. So unfortunately, people who do dedicate their body sometimes can't use that body because of the condition that it's in, especially if they've had some kind of cancer or something like that. So the bodies are checked to make sure that the tissue is good enough to preserve and go through that embalming process. So usually they are quite old, so hence the kind of thinness to these muscles. We don't usually think of them as being this thin. So if we have a look around here, so just going to zoom into the hip area, and you'll see a bit of a slip of these muscles. Just move me out of the way. So the rectus femoris has got two attachments. Yeah, so these two slips of tendon, one on the AIIS, so that's the ASIS up the top, AIIS just there, and then this one, the supraacetabular groove. So superior, acetabular is the socket, and it's just above that socket. So sometimes rec fem can feel like a hip issue, okay, and quite often those people that it's like a hip impingement. So you think it might be a femoroacetabular impingement, or they may have a labral problem, but sometimes it's this little slip of rectus femoris that might be a bit irritated in there. And so it's worth checking out this rectus femoris muscle as well, because usually if there's an irritation here, then there is some discomfort along the line of that muscle as well. So yeah, definitely worth checking that out because of that slip into that area there as well. So there you go, you can see that there. So the two kind of tails, if you like, of that rectus femoris. And there you can see it a little bit easier with the markings on. So AIIS there, and then that supraacetabular region just above that socket. And then there's the other end, and we've already had a look at that, so we'll pause that one there. Cool. So that's your rectus femoris, and then let's just bring in this one as well. And then this. Oh, hello, two of me. Let's get rid of that. Ah, you don't want that. Bear with me a second. This will be one of those where it all goes wrong. Let's try and get that one on. Okay, just get rid of that. That one. Bear with me a sec. No, still not doing it. Bear with me a second. Let me just find another way of getting that on. So yeah, we'll have a look at this sartorius as well. Here we go. I'll just find the right video. Anterior thigh. Here we go. Right. So fingers crossed this will play. Just try and grab that. There we go. There we go. Hallelujah. Okay, right. So if we just do a little bit of an orientation on this one. So there's your iliac crest again, just there. There's your iliacus just inside there, and then your psoas there. So that's your spine, the bottom part of your spine. And again, as we go around this kind of pelvic area, we'll go up into that region as well. And so there's your ASIS and iliac crest area there. So we're going to just add that sartorius muscle on. Just play this video through. So, and there it is there. So it's again, it's quite a thin muscle on this specimen. You wouldn't expect it to be that thin on someone who's kind of young and healthy, but you can see how it sweeps across and it forms part of the femoral triangle. So this this inside edge of sartorius here forms the outside edge of the triangle. So the triangle will be from there and then up, and then that inguinal ligament at the top. So that whole region there is the femoral triangle. And again, we've talked about it a little bit before, but that's where your neurovascular bundle for the thigh is located. So this then comes all the way down, sweeps across the leg, and then attaches down on that pes anserine area. So ASIS all the way down to there. Okay, so that is your sartorius. Cool. Right. So I'm going to skip a few because we have covered these a little bit before, because I want to get to the pelvic floor today. And we've talked about those as well. Let's just skip through those. Okay, here we go. So we've got I wanted to mainly focus on the pelvic floor because it's an area that we've not really covered before on the on Learn Anatomy Online. We certainly didn't do it last year, and then we'll go back to the hamstrings and the some of the common faults with hamstring hip positions and all that kind of stuff. So well, I've mentioned it before, but we will go over it again next week. So there are two main parts of the pelvis. So we've been looking at all of it as a whole, and this area here that's shaded in yellow, this is what is in anatomy terms called the greater pelvis, but it's also the false pelvis because it makes you, it's a wider aperture, so a wider opening than the pelvis actually is. Okay, so the actual the true pelvis, if I just skip forward one, is this bit in here. Okay, so the front edge of the sacrum, and then the inside edges of the ilium, and then the back part of the pubis. So all around there, and that is your true pelvis. So the false pelvis is all of the wings of the ilia and the top part of the sacrum, but the true pelvis is a little bit lower than that. So from the promontory of the sacrum just there, so that front part there, and then wrapping around these alar wings of the sacrum as well at the front. And if you think about it, that makes sense with especially in females with childbirth, because it doesn't matter how big the greater pelvis is, the birth canal is that true pelvis region. So that's the area that is again in anatomical terms is your true pelvis. So but what we're going to have a look at is the structures all around that region. Okay, so because there's connective tissue, there are ligaments that we've seen before, and there are muscles that we haven't seen, like this one, that all provide the walls for the pelvic diaphragm or the pelvic floor. Okay, so and there are two main muscles that we've not really looked at before. So we've got this one here, which is called the levator ani. So this goes from these regions here, the ischial spine, which we've seen before, something called the tendinous arch, which we've not seen before, so we'll have a look at that, and then the pubic bone, the pubis, which we have seen. Okay, so there are various different sections of levator ani that, but when you have a look at the anatomy, they're not as delineated as you see in these images. Okay, so here you can quite clearly see that there's like a fascial line there that's dividing up these sections, and in the real body it's not like that. They're all kind of merged into one. So it's again it's like similar in other areas of the body where kind of anatomists have segmented areas, but in real life they don't look like that. And then we've got this one called coccygeus. So this one goes from the coccyx bone, and we've briefly covered that and some of the anatomy that we've done before, onto the ischial spine. So it creates a so the levator ani and the coccygeus create a muscular wall in the gap that is the true pelvis. So in that bottom part of the pelvic floor. So we've got so what we need to do now is kind of strip it back to the bones, have a look at all the structures around there, and then add on the layers of tissue, and then finishing off with the muscles and then connective tissue to give you a really good view of the whole pelvic floor. So yeah, it looks like a bird's nest or a woven basket. It does. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really nice way of describing it. Yeah, so let's have a look. Right, fingers crossed these videos work. Let's have a look. Otherwise, it might be for some time. Okay. Yes. Oh, thank goodness. Right. Okay. So let's go to this one. So right back to the beginning. So we're going to have a look at the bony anatomy first. Yeah, and there's going to be some bits that we've covered before, but we need to kind of go over them again. So let's have a look at these. So obviously your true pelvis, this area here, this is the region that we're interested in. And if you notice that, if I just pause that there. So in the pelvis, we've got these gaps. Yeah, so we've got the obturator gap. There's a gap here between the sciatic notches. And there has to be structures that fill those gaps to create this pelvic floor. Okay, so and it's a mixture of different tissues. So connective tissue, some quite fibrous tissue, some ligamentous tissue, and then some muscles as well, and then a bit of a combination. So and the whole area is made up of different types of soft tissue. Okay, because obviously the bony structures there, that's all there is. So all of the gaps need to be filled with other soft tissues. So that those are the structures we're gonna have a look at. So the walls of the pelvic cavity, the bony walls, are the sacrum and the coccyx at the back, the pubic rami, which is the ones at the front, the ischial spine, which is the bit in between the greater and the lesser sciatic notch, and then the ischial ramus as well. So the kind of the front part of your bum bones. Okay, so the sitting bones, the ischial tuberosities. So let's have a look at those. So these are all the bony parts. So there's your kind of ischium and pubic. So we'll form the front and the inferior section. And if you have a look at the angles of the sacrum and the coccyx, it forms like a C shape. So this curved appearance that then all of the muscles and connective tissue attach into. Again, so like Sarah said, like that kind of bowl basket type shape. Yeah, it's because of the shape of the sacrum and then the front of the pelvis as well. It forms a bowl where everything then meets in the middle. So the angle of the sacrum is roughly about 30 degrees from the horizontal. Okay, so that's the kind of angle that that is the norm. Okay, we know that there are obviously differences to that. And then the angle at the bottom, quite literally at the bottom, which is your coccyx area. So this area here, this is about a 40-degree angle from the horizontal. So I've just tried to draw those lines on there so you can see the angles. So we've got angled at the top, angled at the bottom to create this curved shape. And then also where the ischial tuberosities are, that then curves up at the front with the ischial rami and the pubic rami. Okay, so again, it is that kind of bowl shape that is created from those bony structures. And that's important when we're looking at some of the attachments later. So yeah, there's that curved shape, so a curved back wall. Okay, so a couple of things that we need to bear in mind as we layer stuff on. So pubis is here at the front, and then obviously we've got your lowest sacral bone, which is just there. So those two are usually in line. Okay, so again, there are variations obviously with pelvic tilts, and we've talked about that a lot. But on the whole, the pubis is roughly in line with the lowest sacral level. Okay, so that's the kind of angle that we're looking at. So let's have a look at these walls then. So this is the side and front walls of the pelvis. So let's have a look at this. Hopefully, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we've got the inside of your ilium, and we've talked about this before. So the ilium is just up here, the pubis is here, and then the ischium, so those sit bones just here. The inside of this area is nice and smooth. Okay, and just on the opposite side to exactly where that arrow is your acetabulum. Yeah, so we've got this nice smooth surface on the inside, and then on the other side of that, we've got this cup. okay, where the hip joint goes in. So all of this area is really, really nice, and it makes sense for it to be smooth when you think about the organs that are in that area. You don't want the chance of things kind of poking into those organs. So that as we sweep around the back, look, there's the acetabulum just there. So we've got a smooth posterior surface, and then it just changes shape where the acetabulum is there. So all of these areas, all of this area here, all of that, these all need to be filled. So there's your bum bones, your ischial tuberosities, talked about those before. There's your coccyx and sacrum. Ischial spine just there. This is important for the muscles in a second. And the obturator foramen, so the hole where the obturator muscles go through. So that's your membrane just there. And again, we've had a look at this before. So if I just orientate you again with all this connective tissue on, there's the pubis. So that'll be your pubic rami, and then your ischiopubic rami just there. Sit bone, so ischial tuberosities down here. Obturator membrane, so the membrane that fills that hole. So again, that forms part of the pelvic floor, because otherwise things would come through that foramen if there wasn't a connective tissue in the way. And then this is your coccyx down the bottom, and then sacrum at the top. There's your greater sciatic notch and your ischial spine. Okay, so that gives you a bit of an orientation of everything. Okay, so body of the pubis is just there, and that's important in a second. There's your ischiopubic rami. So again, ramus means a branch. So it's like a branch off of the ischium. And there's your pubic symphysis and something called the pubic arch. So this area here, this is some of the differences between male and female pelvises that we'll see in a second. The shapes are very different. And these cadavers that are used on here, the main one is a male, but you will see the differences between male and female in a second. So acetabulum just around the side. So and there's the sweeping down of the ischiopubic ramus. So remember I was saying that, let me just pause that there. So we've got that curved back where the sacrum and the coccyx curve in, and then we've got that curved front with that ischiopubic ramus coming up into the pubic tubercle just there. So they're curved from front and back, so it forms like this sling, okay? And that's important for later. So here's the difference between the two pelvises. Okay, so we've got the male side on this left side, and obviously female on the right. So the female aperture, so the female true pelvis is a lot wider and deeper than the male one, for obvious reasons. Okay, I find it very difficult to give birth to a child through the size of that pelvis. And then if you have a look here, the pubic arches are very different as well. So this pubic arch here is quite wide. You can see there. And then also the inferior aperture, so the bottom opening is also wider and deeper than the male, again for obvious reasons of childbirth. So the gap between ischial tuberosities and from the coccyx to the pubic bone is wider and deeper on the female, right? And something that is fairly obvious, I would imagine most of you would realise that. So let's have a look at that in a bit more detail. Okay, and in fact, this is a really, really good image. Let me just go back here. So something you don't realise with the sacrum, I don't think. Can you see this gap here? Just in there. Yeah, so that is where your spinal nerves will come through. Yeah, so when we're having a look at the sacrococcygeal plexus, it's a bit different to the lumbar plexus. Yes, we've got this gap where the nerves come through, so that it's like a sandwich of bone in there, and I don't think many people realize that. But when you see this cross section, so that'll be important for later when we have a look at the lumbar spine. So there's your sacrum. Obviously, we've covered that quite a bit. And then you've got your sacroiliac joints in between. And what we'll start to do is now piece together some the pelvis from side to side. So these are your sacroiliac joint ligaments at the front. Let me just rewind that a tad. So if you have a look there, can you see the sacroiliac joint? Absolutely not. It is just covered in ligaments. Okay, and that this is at the front. Okay, so this is forming. This is a little bit higher than the true pelvis, but it does drop down into that pelvic brim area. But you can see that the connective tissue across that joint is vast. Okay, is an absolute solid joint, and that's what I've put is somewhere under there. And then if you have a look around the back, they got huge posterior sacroiliac joint ligaments again. This is a very, very tough structure. Okay, and this is why there's arguments all the time about whether this actually moves or not. We need to go back into these ligaments again. So they've got sacrotuberous ligament going from the sacrum to ischial tuberosity, and then we'll bring in the some of the other ligaments as well, which again they form the back wall of the pelvic floor. So we've had a look at these before. So there's your sacrotuberous going from the sacrum to the ischial tuberosity, and then we've got another one going from the sacrum to the ischial spine. So your sacrospinous ligament. And again, we've looked at these before, but now we need to look at them with a different view, because what these form are the trusses for the posterior part of the pelvic wall. Okay, so there's lots of attachments onto these ligaments to provide the integrity of that posterior part of the wall. Okay, so yeah, before they were just ligaments, but now we're starting to realise what their purpose is. So the sacrospinous ligament sits slightly in front, a bit across, and then again we've got these holes here, so greater and lesser sciatic notches. Okay, and it's the ligaments that form these gaps. But obviously those gaps need to be filled as well, because they can't just be open like that, because then the intestines will come through and the pelvic contents. And this is the aperture. So it's formed by those ligaments. So these are your sacrotuberous ligaments here, and they are what provide the structural walls of that inferior aperture. So the lower opening. Okay, so there's your pubic bone at the front, there's your coccyx at the back, and then these ligaments that we've looked at over the last few weeks, those are the walls of that lower portion. You've got your ischiopubic rami just there. I just pause that there so you can see everything. So sacrotuberous ligaments here. These are the rami, so there's your ischial tuberosities, and then coming up into the pubic region just there. So you can see all of the structures now that form that opening of the inferior pelvic aperture. Okay, so on first look, it looks like a circle, yeah? But if you remember what we were talking about, the curved nature of the front and the back, it's actually a bit deceptive. So we're going to have a look at that in a second. So it looks like a circle there, but if you look from the side, it's actually curved. Okay, so it sweeps down sacrotuberous ligaments, then you've got your ischial tuberosities, then it comes up into the pubis at the front. So this is bone, 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 and then ligament attaching into more bone at the top here. So it's that mixture of soft tissues and the harder tissues, the bony tissues as well. So it's not a circle, it's a curve, all right? But it looks like a circle from certain angles. So you can see that real steep curve there. So sacrotuberous ligament just there, swept underneath. There's some really, really nice images there so you can see it. But from the top, it looks like a circle. Okay, but we know if you look from a different angle, it's not, and it's got that curve that like Sarah said about that kind of bird's nest appearance. Cool. Okay, let's have a look at the muscles now. So we'll just layer these muscles on. Orientation again, pubis just at the front. So it'll be your superior pubic rami, and then it will be coming down into your ischial tuberosities around about here. There's your coccyx, and it will going up into your sacrum just there. So what we can see now is we've got this tissue that's covering the gaps. So we had the sacrotuberous ligament coming down, we had the sacrospinous ligament coming across. These muscles will attach themselves to these ligaments to create that back wall. So let's have a look at these. There's your coccygeus muscle. So your sacrum onto the ischial spine, and there's your coccyx just there. So it's kind of forms like this hammock. And if I just pause that there. Yeah, so coccygeus doesn't have a gross movement function. It is there as a kind of to provide structure. Yeah, so it's not like a bicep where it will contract and it will do something. It provides the integrity for the pelvic floor, and that's its only role. The things that it attaches to, they don't really move that much. But you need tone, you need muscle tone in this area to provide that integrity of that region. What I've done up here as well, just to make it a little bit easier, is I've put in some of the origin, insertion, and action tables. I've started to layer these onto the videos now, and if I just move me out of the way, this was the image that we saw from the PowerPoint presentations. So that's what it looks like in the images, and that's what it looks like in real life. Okay, so you can see the differences between the two. And there is levator ani. So again, this is the image that we saw in the PowerPoints, and this is what it looks like in real life. So when I was saying about certain areas being there being regions, it doesn't look like that in real life. It just looks like one big blob of tissue. And the key thing to look out for is this line here. You'll be able to see that bit of connective tissue there. And that is that's important for the attachments of these muscles. So we're going to have a look at that in a sec. So you've got levator ani just there. There's your coccyx and sacrum just here. So you can see it attaches from the ischial spine to the pubis. So pubis to the ischial spine. If I just go back one there and pause that there. Okay, cool. And then this connective tissue here, so that white stuff in the middle, that is your tendinous arch. So there is a band of really, really thick connective tissue that goes from the ischial spine all the way onto the pubis, okay? And it's that tendinous arch that the levator ani attaches into as its insertion, or as its attachment point. So and that is really, really tough connective tissue. So it's there is part bone, so ischial spine and pubis, but then the middle section is the tendinous arch. So that section there. So there's your tendinous arch going all the way to the pubic bone, just at the front, just there. Cool. So this is your levator ani. So it comes sweeps downwards, okay, and it obviously it meets up with the other levator ani coming the other way, and then that's what it looks like at the back. So it kind of fills this space at the back. There's your ischial tuberosity and your sacrum. So this is how that gap is filled. It's filled by these muscles. This area here is usually filled with fat as well, but that's your levator ani muscle just there. Okay, so it's filling that gap. Like I was saying before, there's loads of holes in the bony structure, and the muscles fill the gap, or muscles and connective tissue will fill the gap. Cool. Okay, so those are your two main muscles, and now we'll have a look at everything together. Okay, so the levator ani is split into three main parts, but again, it's not obvious where they split. So it's one of those that is kind of neither here nor there. So we've got this back section, iliococcygeus, so from the ilium to the coccyx. And again, like you can't really see the delineation of these. And then pubococcygeus, so from the pubic region onto the coccyx. And again, you might not have heard of the sections of muscle. and then we're going to have a look at them all joining together. And there we go. So you've got your two levator ani muscles just there. There's your obturator internus. That's the tendinous arch. And then there's your ischial spines in there. And then that's your tip of your coccyx just there. Okay. So if I just pause that there. So now you can see how the diaphragm of the pelvic floor all kind of knits together. So we've looked at it from one side where you've got that tendinous arch coming across and the levator ani attaching into there onto the pubis and the ischial spine. Then you've got all the ligaments at the back, so sacrotuberous ligament and sacrospinous ligament, and the muscles will attach into those as well. And then they meet together on both sides, but obviously with a gap in between for the rectus, for the rectum, sorry, for the vagina, obviously in females, and then for the urethra in both male and female. So, and this is the thing that can be a bit kind of weird to get your head around for blokes, because your urethra comes through the pelvic floor, so where you excrete your urine, but the spermatic cords going down into the testes don't go through this region. They come over the pubic rami. And so we'll have a look at that when we look at the inguinal ligament area, when we look at the lower part of the abdomen. So you've got the urethra coming through either at the top of the vagina or into the penis, and that comes through the pelvic floor. But the spermatic cords take a different course, and they go over the inguinal or underneath the inguinal ligament over the pubic rami. Okay, so it's mad because you've got the urethra coming under and then the spermatic cords going over the top. So we've got all these different tubes in this area, and obviously it's different for in terms of the testicles and the spermatic cords for the male. And you'll see in a second the differences between the two, because we'll show you the differences with male and female pelvis. So this is the urogenital hiatus. So your rectum, urethra, and vagina, obviously in females, will go through there. So your levator ani is just here, and we've got this tough band of connective tissue. So this really thick ligament here. So that joins onto the coccyx, and it forms a bit of an arch around here. So there you go. So that's where the rectum attaches, just into there. So rectum attaches there. The vagina will be obviously in the middle, and then the urethra at the front. But this is a male pelvis. This one is very quite narrow. This one, and then this over the top. This is a really thick band of connective tissue. So you've got all of those muscles underneath, providing that integrity at the bottom. But then we've got this additional layer of structural integrity with this fascia, and you can see now that the holes are starting to seal up. Yeah, so we've got this fascia, this connective tissue wrapping around the rectum, and then here you've got the prostate at the front as well, where the urethra will go through. So yeah, and obviously in a female, the vagina would be there. So all of this fascial structure just holding everything together. So that's what it looks like. I think a couple of you, when they've been to the labs, have been really interested in having a look at the pelvic floor, and there are some really good pelvic floor specimens when you get to the labs. So the levator ani and the coccygeus muscles that we've just looked at are underneath a layer of fascia. Okay, so this connective tissue, which is what you can see in that video just there. Okay, cool. Last couple, we're nearly there. So we're going to have a look at something called the perineum. If I just pause that there. So this is a view from the back of a pelvis, and we're going to have a look at the differences between male and female in a second. So you've got your coccyx, ischial tuberosities. So the anus will be around here. These muscles here will be the levator ani muscles, and usually these spaces here between the ischium and the coccyx, those are usually filled with fat in the living body, but obviously all that fat's been taken away, so you can see underneath it. So there's your sacrotuberous ligaments, levator ani muscles, and then as we come around, you can see then the opening for the urogenital organs that come through that region there. Okay, so there's your pubococcygeal part of the levator ani, and then there's the opening for the anus. Ligament attaching to the coccyx. And then here we've got some of the sphincter muscles that wrap around the anus. Okay, and I won't say what Tristan called them earlier. I've never heard that term before, and now I can't unforget it. Okay, so there's the anus, and you've got these muscles that wrap around that that control the opening and closing of the anus, and then it's attached into that anococcygeal ligament into there. Okay, so we've got this other layer of muscular wall that act on the anus, but not the rectum, because the rectum's a bit higher up. So that your urethra is at the front here. Okay, so obviously this is a male model, but in the female, the urethra will be in exactly the same kind of position, but you just have the vagina underneath just there. I'll just forward that a little bit. Okay, so you can see all of this muscular, all of these muscular walls, and then this is the female specimen. So the ischial tuberosities are a lot wider. Obviously, around the rectum and the anus is all exactly the same. The urethra is exactly the same, but you've obviously got the opening for the vagina there, which obviously you don't have in the male. So the urethra just at the top, anus just here, and then the vaginal opening just there. So it's very, very similar in a lot of respects. Levator ani muscles exactly the same, coccygeus muscles exactly the same. Okay, and this is just showing what we call the perineum, which is from your coccyx all the way through to your pubic symphysis, and then your ischial tuberosities on either side. All of that region there is called the perineum, which is the bottom, basically the bottom part of the pelvic floor. Okay, and this is why I did joke about it earlier. You've got to be careful of saying peroneal and perineal, because they are very different things. So your perineum is to do with the pelvic floor region, and your peroneals are on the outside of your lower leg. So you've got to make sure you get your I's and the O's the right way around to avoid confusion there. Okay, and then this is just a summary of everything. Okay, so this kind of brings it all in together. So sacrotuberous ligaments, ischial tuberosities, and now we're going to start to add some of the layers on. And here we are. This is what it looks like in the living body. Without it being dissected back so far. So remember I said these ischiorectal area was filled with fat, so that's what it looks like normally. These are your sacrotuberous ligaments going into the sacroiliac joints at the back. I'll just keep pausing it because I labelled this one to death. So there's your sacrotuberous ligaments just there, ischial tuberosities just there, piriformis poking through, obturator internus poking through. Just get rid of that arrow just so it doesn't confuse things. There we go. So you've got all your gemelli muscles and the quadratus muscles that we looked at. There's your sciatic nerve coming through just underneath piriformis on this specimen. You can see how close and tight packed everything is. And then there's your glute muscles, so glute medius, ischial tuberosity in your hamstrings. And then there's the line of your glutes. And now we're going to put the glutes over the top. There they are. And then that is everything. Okay, so literally gone from bones, zoomed all the way out to glutes. The only thing we're missing is the skin over the top. Okay, so There you go. So that's a look at your pelvic floor and everything that's around it and all the structures around it. Yeah, so hopefully that will give you a bit better of an understanding when we do the abdominal region and we look at something called the peritoneum. Then we'll see how closely linked that peritoneum is to the pelvic floor, because there are some attachments in there that we'll see when we get to that region. It will show you how everything connects all together. Then, okay, cool. Um, Again, apologies about Monday. Facebook still haven't let me broadcast live into this group again, so we will probably do YouTube again on Monday, but we'll definitely be able to broadcast, which would be great. So we're back to normal on Monday, 10 o'clock. I'm going to finish off a little bit of some of the things that are left on the hip, and then we're going to start to go into the blood supply and the nerve supply for the hip and the pelvis region. Okay, so thank you for joining me today, and hope you enjoyed that one. And I'll see you as usual Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.